Well, I want to transition this because we're both having the same mentality about this team in general.
Uh-huh.
But I do want to extend it a little bit further to talk about DeAndre Hopkins with the Titans. I'll be honest, this is not who I initially had in my wide receiver position. But also, we started to do a lot of overlap in terms of team by team. I didn't want to dedicate this basically last half of the pod to one team. But I also do think DeAndre Hopkins is a guy who
Well, if
sticks
it's
out.
warranted, that's okay.
Well, we're going to talk about that team plenty coming up. Don't worry. But for this one, I don't know. I think it's overlooked what's happened with DeAndre Hopkins. I'm going to be the guy who is wrong very boldly until I'm right about DeAndre Hopkins, because last year I was like, I don't know. I'm not really interested in DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, where you drafted him, he was still fine. But he's also a guy who struggled to even get 1,000 yards. Not saying that's no small feat, but he had 137 targets and just barely notched 1,000 yards. He had the 14th most targets of any pass catcher, period.
Mm-hmm.
Now Calvin Ridley comes over. He's the exact same situation. Barely got 1,000 yards, super inconsistent, basically the same number of targets with the Jags last year. They're so inconsistent alone. I can't imagine that together they make each other more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way both of them can thrive. Again, we talked about the backfield. Those guys are both very capable pass catchers, Spears and Pollard. The only hope, because the Titans have notoriously been towards the bottom of the heap in just passing. They just don't.
Mm-hmm.
They don't pass. They're the opposite of the Chargers. The last few years, they just didn't pass at all.
Well, when you have
So
Derrick Henry,
maybe.
you don't have to pass.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And now, obviously, they don't have somebody of his caliber. Maybe that ratchets up a little bit. And Brian Callahan, the OC from the Bengals, is coming over for this year. I'm sure the pass attempts tick up. But, I mean, does DeAndre Hopkins get more than 137 targets this year?
Yeah, I don't see that. Not with Calvin Ridley there. We just talked about the running backs, like you said. And then, they've got like 8 tight ends on their team that they're going to throw to it and on any given Sunday. So,
always the tight ends.
I mean, so it's just, I agree with you. There's going to be an uptick in pass attempts. I don't think it's going to be significant enough that it's going to be able to support both Ridley and Hopkins at a high level.
Yeah.
Because they're not efficient wide receivers. They're not big yak guys.
At this stage, he's certainly DeAndre Hopkins is not, unfortunately. And again,
So,
another year older for a guy who's I don't know what already 32, certainly turning 32 in the season if he's not already. Yeah, I'm just gonna be out, unfortunately.
Yeah, if it comes to redraft, I mean, for sure, Ridley's going to be going higher than Hopkins at this point of their careers. Depending on how far he falls, maybe I'd take a flyer on him as like my 4th or 5th wide receiver. If he falls that far, I don't know, only because he still has the name recognition.
Yeah.
And he's been a great fantasy producer for years, so he'll probably get overdrafted or higher than I'd be willing to take him.